for the delay. Okay, so tonight we're going to be speaking about Eruv Tavshilin. In the last couple of years, I've tried to do shirim that have some relevance to the Chag, to Shavuot. So this year, since we actually do have need of an Eruv Tavshilin, I thought it'd be interesting to take a little bit closer look about to what is Eruv Tavshilin, how does it work, and what is the purpose. Okay, tonight will be a sort of a more of a text-based shiur, but don't worry, we have English and everything will be on slides, and we're going to hopefully go through it methodically and gain some insight into what we'll be doing on, I guess that will be Wednesday night.
Wednesday day.
Wednesday, close
No,
to
Wednesday, no, Thursday day.
Thursday day, yes, Thursday day. Okay, here we go. Okay, so before, as a sort of an introduction, I'd like to take a look at an interesting statement from Chazal from Masechet Yoma. Amar Rav, Rav said, "Kiyam Avraham Avinu kol haTorah kula, shne'emar ekev asher shema Avraham b'koli." Rav said that Abraham fulfilled the entire Torah, even before it was given, obviously. Also a connection to Shavuot, I guess. I hadn't thought of that before, but we see that because it's stated the pasuk Ekev Asher Shema Abraham B'Kolu, because Abraham hearkened to my voice. A little later on in the discussion, we have the statement Amar Rav Ve'itema Rav Ashi. Statement some say from Rav Ashi, Ki Amar Abraham Avinu Afilu Eruv Tavshilin. That Abraham Avinu kept even Eruv Tavshilin in the midst of all the mitzvot, Shne'emar, because it says Torotai, because the verse uses the word Torotai in the plural, Achat Torah shebechtav, and the meaning would be the written Torah, V'achat Torah sheba'al peh, and the oral Torah. So we see from this statement from Chazal that Eruv Tavshilin is plucked out of all the rabbinic laws, in the entire oral Torah, as sort of the prime example to show that Abraham kept the entire Torah. So one thing to have in the back of our mind is why specifically Eruv Tavshilin? What is the connection? Okay. Let's go get into the meat of it. What is the problem that Eruv Tavshilin addresses? We know we have to do it. Why? Why do we need it? Okay, we have a verse in Shemot. Ubiyom harishon mikra kodesh, ubiyom hashvi mikra kodesh yelachem, kol melacha lo ye'aseh bahem, ach asher ye'achel l'chol nefesh, hu levado ye'aseh lachem. Okay, you shall celebrate a sacred occasion on the first day. This is talking about Pesach, and a sacred mikra kodesh on the seventh day. No work at all shall be done on them. Only what every person is to eat, that alone may be prepared for you. So we see that that there is an exception. There's an exception made for preparing food on Yom Tov, what we call ochel nefesh, things that are needed to eat. And we see how that plays out in the halacha. This is from the Shulchan Aruch, and in the laws of what malachas, what actions are permitted on Yom Tov. Kol malacha asura b'Shabbat, asura b'Yom Tov. All the forbidden work that one cannot do on Shabbat is also forbidden on Yom Tov. Chutz mimalechet ochel nefesh, except for the work, the actions of preparing food. The chutz mehotza v'havara, and along with that, the carrying from one domain to the other, and for starting or igniting a flame. Those are connected to ochel nefesh, to the preparation of food, as they are necessary for it. Okay, so we see that from the verse we get to the in the halacha that we cannot, that Yom Tov is similar to Shabbat in terms of the prohibition of malacha, except that there is this exception for ochel nefesh, for preparing food. Okay, now we have also in the Shulchan Aruch, shelo lahachin b'Yom Tov lechaviro, that one cannot prepare from one day of Yom Tov to another. Asur la'afod levashel o lishchot, one may not bake or cook or slaughter b'Yom Tov, on Yom Tov, letzorach machar, for the following day. Afilu hu Shabbat, even if it is Shabbat, or Yom Tov, or it's the second day of Yom Tov. Va'afilu b'shnei yamim shel Rosh Hashanah. And even from the first day of Rosh Hashanah to the second day of Rosh Hashanah, and that's because there's an idea that the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah are actually Yom HaRichta, that in some way it's one singular day. But even with that concept, one still couldn't prepare from the first day of Rosh Hashanah to the second day of Rosh Hashanah. Okay, so now we see the problem, right? We know we're allowed to cook and we want to be able to cook for Shabbat, but we have this prohibition against doing something on one day of Yom Tov for the second day, whether it's Shabbos or a second day Yom Tov. So what are we going to do? How can we cook for Shabbat on Yom Tov? Okay, now we're going into the deep into the sugyot, into the Gemaras. Okay, this is from the Gemara in Pesachim. Okay, we're starting by the arrow at the top. Itmar, it said, Yom Tov l'chol, one who cooks from Yom Tov for the following day, which is a chol, which is not Yom Tov. Rav Chisda Amar Loket. Rav Chisda says that person receives lashes because they have transgressed. Rabba Omer Eino Loket. And Rabba says, no, they don't get lashes. Rav Chisda Amar Loket. Rav Chisda says they do receive lashes. Lo amrinam hoyo. We don't rely on the concept of hoyo. Okay, and what is hoyo? Amar loke lo amrinan hoyo, and what is that? Umiklai le orchim chazile, because it could be that guests would come and they would need to eat the food. So Rav Chisda says we don't rely on that concept, but we have Rabba, who says they don't receive lashes because we do rely on hoyo. So what's going on here? So we have Rav Chisda says they get lashes because no hoyo, and Rabba says they don't receive lashes. So according to Rabba, as we know, we've just learned, one cannot prepare on Yom Tov for the following day. But if you were to cook, we could say that, maybe guests will come and those guests will need to eat and they'll wind up eating it on Yom Tov. So it's okay. So for Rabbah, he says we can rely on that concept and say that it's okay. Rav Chisda says, no, that doesn't work. Okay. And obviously, according to Rabbah, there is a biblical prohibition for preparing, but if you rely on in terms of cooking for hoil, then you did not transgress. Okay, going further in the Gemara, Amar le Rabba le Rav Chisda. So Rabba answers Rav Chisda, and he says to him, Mark, lo amrin on hoil. You said that we don't rely on hoil. Ha'echofin miyom tov l'Shabbat. If we don't rely on that concept of hoil, how could one ever prepare on Yom Tov for Shabbat? So what does Rav Chisda answer? Amar le mishum Eruv Tavshilin. Rav Chisda says, no, we can do it through Eruv Tavshilin. Answers back, Rabbah, Amar le mishum Eruv Tavshilin, mishum Eruv Tavshilin shrinan isura deraita. So how could a rabbinic law permit something which is forbidden from the Torah? How could Eruv Tavshilin get you out of this situation? And Rav Chisda answers him, Amar le midoraita tzorachei Shabbat naasim b'Yom Tov. For Rav Chisda, the system is built, it's understood that on Yom Tov you may prepare food for Shabbat. That's just the way it is. And if we look at the Rashi on the bottom in the yellow, Rashi comments, Ach asher yechel l'chol nefesh. That's the verse that we looked at earlier. V'Shabbat v'Yom Tov Chara Kedusha, that Yom Tov and Shabbat are the same Kedusha. And they're also, and both of them are called Shabbat. There's Yom Tov is also called Shabbaton, Shabbat. So just as it's built into the Kedusha of Yom Tov that you can cook on that day for itself, so too that extends for cooking for Shabbat, which is the following day. And we see both Rabbah and Rav Chisda hold that from the Torah, one is permitted to prepare food on Yom Tov for Shabbat, but obviously for different reasons. Okay, getting to the end of this sugya, the Gemara says, "B'Rabbanan hu de gazrube gzera shema yerum ofim miyom tov af lechol." So what happened? Both Rav Chisda and Rabbah say that you actually can cook, but the rabbis enacted that you can't do it. Why? Because a person may come to think that if you did it for the following day and it's Shabbat, that you could also do it for the following day, even if it's Chol. There may be some confusion. Okay. The Chayvan Itzarchu Rabbanan Eruv Tavshilin Eitle Kehilah. And because of this, they and the need, they established Eruv Tavshilin, and within Eruv Tavshilin we have what the Gemara says Kehilah, a sign, something that you would be cognizant of. Okay, so reviewing, the rabbis prohibited that which was allowed by the Torah, and that was because they were afraid there would be some confusion if people knew that they could cook for one day to the other when it was Shabbat, that they might also make the mistake and do the same thing when the following day was Chol. They instituted the Eruv Tavshilin so that people would be aware of that. Okay, questions that can arise from these, from the two opinions, one of Rav Chisda and one of Rabbah. So according to Rabbah, what we said allows cooking on for Shabbat on Yom Tov because of the concept of ho'il, that guests may come and one could use it. Could one prepare food on Shabbat on Yom Tov late in the afternoon? Right, if it's getting towards the late afternoon and you start preparing food for Shabbos the next day, and there's really going to be no time for guests to come and eat, how would that work with his position? Would it be allowed? And according to Rav Chisda, who understood the Eruv Tavshilin as a heker, as some sort of sign to remind people that they're only permitted to cook for the following day if it's Shabbat. So what would happen if you made the Eruv Tavshilin but it was lost, or if it was eaten? So then if you didn't have that heker, even though you made the bracha and you did it, would you still be able to rely on it? Also, how far in advance, if it's just a matter of being there, how far in advance could you make the Eruv Tavshilin? Could you make it on the, could you have it from the first day of Sukkot to the last day, to Shmini Atzeret? If you made it in the beginning, you kept it the whole week, and it was in the refrigerator, and you took it out, and there's a heker, there's a sign. Would that work? And can the Eruv Tavshilin be made Erev Shabbat? Right? If it's just a heker, can it be made on like say the first day of Yom Tov? Okay, those are some questions to have in mind. We're going to go to another sugya. This is in Beitza. This starting with the Mishnah. Yom Tov shechal liot erev Shabbat lo yivashel betchila mi Yom Tov leShabbat aval mivashel hu liyom Tov v'im hotir leShabbat v'oseh tavshil me'erev Yom Tov v'somech alav leShabbat. So Yom Tov, which is Erev Shabbat, you don't initiate to starting to cook from Yom Tov for Shabbat, but you can make food for Yom Tov on Yom Tov, and whatever is left over for Shabbat. Or another, the Oseh Tavshil Me'erev Yom Tov, where you could make food before Yom Tov, Erev Yom Tov, v'somech alav leShabbat, and you could rely on it for cooking for the needs of Shabbat. on Yom Tov, and we look at Rashi in the highlighted area. Lo yevashel betchila, one does not initiate. Liot tchilat bishulo ve'ikaro l'shem Shabbat. Right. So the essence and the main purpose of your cooking shouldn't be for Shabbat. El l'shem Yom Tov. It should be you're really cooking for Yom Tov. Avhamiyushar yel Shabbat, and what's left over could be for Shabbat. Right. And as it says later on in the Gemara. And you could cook as long as you don't try to pull, what the Gemara calls harama, where, you try to say, oh, it's really for Yom Tov, but it's so late that it's impossible to have it. The Gemara understands that well, that some people might try to, pull a fast one. Okay. All right, so going forward. Okay, now we're hitting the Gemara. Okay. The Gemara starts off and says, Mina hane mili. Where do we get this from? Right now, it's interesting to note that that is usually a phrase that introduces trying to understand where a mitzvah d'oraita comes from. But in this case, we know it's not a mitzvah. We're talking about Erev Tavshilin. We know it's not something from the Torah, but it's so strong, it's so important that the Gemara uses that phrase, Mina hane mili. Where do we know this from? Amar Shmuel. Shmuel says the Amar Kra, because the verse says, Zachor Yom HaShabbat lekodsho. Right? Remember to sanctify the Shabbos. Obviously, we know that that's not really what we understand the verse to mean, and they're working with that. So obviously, it's not the real source. But what does he say? Zachrehu ma'acher shabbat lahashkicho. So he says, what is that verse coming to tell us? That you should remember it from something else that's going to make you forget it. And what is that other thing? That other thing is Yom Tov. If we look at Rashi, Zachreya ma'acher shabbat lahashkicho, Keshabbat Yom Tov be'erev Shabbat. When Yom Tov comes Erev Shabbat, Karov Shabbat lehishtareach machmat Yom Tov. Yom Tov, Shabbos could be forgotten because of Yom Tov. Shemarbe b'seudat hayom ve'eino maniach l'Shabbat k'dei kvodo. Right? There's so many meals and so many food coming, you might forget to leave and have a nice meal for yourself on Shabbos. So that's what that's what in this drasha, that's what the verse is coming to remind us. And going on, the Hizircha Katuv l'Zachro k'shema'arev Eruv Tavshilin nimsa shezochro sheharei eino oseh ela machmat Shabbat. So with the Erev Tavshilin, you remember that you're cooking something specifically for Shabbat, and it won't get lost in all the other food of Yom Tov. Okay, going further, Gemara says, "My tama." What is the reason? Amar Rava Kedei sheyivor mana yafe leShabbat umana yafe leYom Tov. So Rava explains a little more that it's that you'll have both good meals for good meals for Shabbat and good meals for Yom Tov, and the food for Shabbat won't get lost in the shuffle. Okay. Going further, Rav Ashi Omer. So then Rav Ashi comes along and says, "Kedei sheyomru eino fi miyom tov leShabbat, kal v'chomer miyom tov lechol." So Rav Ashi then says, no, the reason is that you won't, and this is what we saw in the other Gemara, that you won't come to think that because you can cook for Shabbat when it's the following day, you could also cook for Chol on the following day. So we see here that there's actually two different reasons for Erev Tavshilin. According to Rava, the Erev Tavshilin is for Kavod Shabbat. We don't want Shabbat to lose out within the meals of Yom Tov. According to Rav Ashi, the Erev Tavshilin is to protect the Kavod of Yom Tov, so that you wouldn't be cooking on Yom Tov for Chol and say, oh, it's a great time to prepare for the rest of the week. Okay, let's go further. So we have the two views of Rav Ashi and Rava. Okay. Tanan. So now we're going back to the Mishnah. Tanan, Oset Tavshil Me'erev Yom Tov V'Somech Alav L'Shabbat. So going back to the Mishnah, we said that you can make an Eruv Tavshilin and rely on it so that you can cook on Yom Tov for Shabbat. Gemara says, Bishlama l'Rav Ashi. That works for Rav Ashi. The Amar Kadesh Yamru Ein Ofim Miyom Tov L'Shabbat. Hainu Demerev Yom Tov Ein B'Yom Tov Lo. Right. So if we're saying that it's we're protecting the kavod of Yom Tov, and we want to make sure people don't do that. So I understand don't cook from Yom Tov to Chol. I understand why we're doing it before. Why we have to do it Erev Yom Tov. Okay. Ela l'Rava my area. So my area Erev Yom Tov afilu b'Yom Tov nami. So for Rava, who said no, it's about Shabbos. We have to make sure we have the right food for Shabbos. Why do I care that it has to be made Erev Yom Tov, before Yom Tov? I should be able to make it even on the first day of Yom Tov, when the second day for the second day, if the third day is Shabbos, or I should be able to do it just before Shabbos if it's just about making sure you have food for Shabbos and not eating all of everything for Yom Tov. So then I should be able to do it some other time, not necessarily before Yom Tov. And the Gemara follows up and says, "Hey Nachanami, yes, that's true. Yes, according to Rava, that should be the case. Ella Gezerah Shema Yivsha." But the rabbis prohibited doing it even doing it on Yom Tov, making Erev Tavshilin on Yom Tov, and made us do it Erev Yom Tov, so that we wouldn't there would be no possibility of making mistake and not doing it properly or in time. Okay, let's quickly see how this plays out in the halacha. Okay, this is from the laws of Yom Tov and the laws of Erev Tavshilin. I'll read it in English because we're a little short on time. Yom Tov that falls out on Erev Shabbat, one may not initiate cooking for Shabbat in a pot on its own, but one may cook in a number of pots for Yom Tov, and if any is left over, it remains for Shabbat. You could have 5 pots, and you cook 5 full pots, and you eat a little bit on Yom Tov, and what's ever left over, that can, in those 5 pots, can be for Shabbat. Okay, but then the Mechaber says by means of Eruv Tavshilin, one can initiate cooking for Shabbat, but we can use the Eruv Tavshilin and then even cook on Yom Tov for Shabbat. The Ramah says the explanation of the Eruv is that one may cook and bake on Yom Tov for Shabbat with what was already cooked and baked already from Erev Yom Tov for the purposes of Shabbat, and with that one did not initiate Malacha on Yom Tov, but rather completed it. So he understands it. This is similar to the Rashi. We said that you started cooking Erev Yom Tov, and you're sort of completing it on Yom Tov, but the essence and the real initiation was before Yom Tov, not actually on Yom Tov. And now let's look at the Mishnah Brura on that phrase, Ba'al Yedei Eruv Mevashel Betchilah. By means of Eruv Tavshilin, we can initiate cooking. So he says that the poskim wrote that the permission of the Eruv is even for one who says that Melachot of Shabbat are not done on Yom Tov according to the Torah, right? That would be Rabbah. Remember we said Rav Chisda said Tzarchei Shabbat Nasim B'Yom Tov, that you can, that's the way the system is built, that you can get ready for cooking for Shabbat on Yom Tov. Rabbah didn't hold that way, and he used the out of Ho'il. So according to him, one is not able to actually prepare food for Yom Tov on Shabbat, according to the Torah. But the Mishnah Brura says, in any case, the Eruv is efficacious because there is only a rabbinic prohibition. And according to the Torah, we say Ho'il, right? So we can use Ho'il, and there's really only a rabbinic prohibition to not cook without an Eruv Tavshilin. But now look what he says towards the end. The Achronim wrote that on Yom Tov, which is Erev Shabbat, one should be careful to begin one's preparations for Shabbat so that one finishes them while there is still ample time in the day. Because close to the evening, when there would be no need on Yom Tov itself, there is a malacha from the Torah. So we see that even with the Eruv Tavshilin, underlying the rabbinic permission on top of the rabbinic prohibition, underlying that is still the Torah prohibition, which was allowed through the means of saying Ho'il. I hope that was clear. Okay, now to get a little bit more nuanced, I'm going to try to finish a little nuanced understanding of the name of Eruv Tavshilin. I think it says a lot. We're going to look very quickly at different explanations of what the name means. Okay, this is in the Rambam. Okay, the Rambam says, why is it Lamani Krashma Eruv? Shekashem Eruv Shosim B'chatzirot Mobaot Me'erev Shabbat Mishum Heker Kadei Shelo Ya'alel Datam Shemutar Laotzi Mirishut Lirishut B'Shabbat. Kach Zeh HaTavshil Mishum Heker B'Zikaron Kadei Shelo Yidmu B'Yachashir Shemutar Lafot B'Yom Tov Ma She'ino Nechal Bo B'Yom. So why is it called Eruv? Why does it use the concept of Eruv for Eruv Tavshilin? Because it's a heker. It's some sort of reminder for not cooking only when when Shabbat is the following day. Okay, and that you can't you can't just can't prepare on Yom Tov, and that's similar, he says, to Eruv Tchumim and Eruv Chatzerot, other types of Eruv which are done as markers to allow certain things. And the Ravid comments, if you look on the last line, Be'enoken, he quotes the Rama, says that's not the case. Who ma'arev tzarchei Shabbat in tzarchei Yom Tov. No, it uses the word Erev because Erev is also can mean mixing, and you're mixing the needs of Shabbat with the needs of Yom Tov. That is, you're preparing for Yom Tov before Yom Tov, and you're also preparing for Shabbat, Erev Yom Tov. So it's mixing the two together. Okay. A few more items. The Migdal Oz. He quotes the Rambam, and then he says he has a little different take, and he says that it actually comes from the idea that it's Eruv from Erev. It's the evening, because the whole thing is done the evening before. And finally, he has an Isur quote, and he says, and this is a Ravalai, that it's sweet to me. He uses that same root to say that he likes it. And finally, we have Mor Katzia, I believe is Rabbi Yaakov Emden, and he has a different take, and he says that Eruv Tavshilin is similar to Eruv Techumim and Eruv Chatzerot, in that you are allowing other people to rely on it and to do things which they normally would not. An Eruv Chatzerot, like the Eruv that we have in any community, allows people to carry when they normally wouldn't. And same thing with Eruv Techumim, it allows not just you, but other people in the city to extend how far they can work on Shabbat. And the same thing for Eruv Tavshilin, that it allows one can make it and other people can rely on it. And so what he's really saying is that it comes from the Lashon Eruv is from the Lashon of arevut, of guarantor, of being guarantors, of allowing other people to benefit from something that you have done and taken care of. Okay, we have a little review, but I'm not going to go through it. I hope I don't need to, and that you took everything in. I want to get to the very end because we started with that quote from Masechet Yoma about Avraham Avinu. So I want to go back to that, and let's see. I'm going to skip the little review here and get back to this statement from Chazal. So one thing I was thinking of, why is Eruv Tavshilin taken as the prime example of Torah Sheba'al Peh? And I think we could say after learning this that it's both, the rabbis both prohibited and allowed something in the same thing. It encompasses both powers of the rabbis, and especially when it was relying on a mitzvah d'oraita and of working with that and showing their power to both allow, to prohibit and to permit. So I think that's one possible reason, and I'm sure there are others. And I would like finally to share with you a beautiful idea from the Maharal. And he asked this question, and he has a whole idea of why specifically Eruv Tavshilin was singled out here vis-a-vis Avraham Avinu. and I'm going to put a little excerpt from, this is from Netzach Israel, and I'm going to try to say it over in English, and if you can understand the Hebrew, you can read it. He basically says that we know that Shabbat is Me'ein Olam Haba. Shabbat is sort of as a reflection of the world to come, and there's a concept of in Chazal that with the rabbis that if you prepared before Shabbat, you benefit on Shabbat, right? That you have to Misha Taraf Be'erev Shabbat Yechel B'Shabbat. One who toils before can eat on Shabbat. Umisha Lo Taraf Be'erev Shabbat Ma Yochal. And if you don't do that, if you don't prepare beforehand, what will you have? And he said that Yom Tov is a sort of just a slightly lesser kedusha than Shabbat, and he likens that to Yemot HaMashiach. Shabbat can represent the world to come, and Yom Tov can represent the days of the Mashiach. And so he says that, really, the time to prepare for Shabbat is before Yom Tov, and the same way, the time to prepare for Yemot HaMashiach is, for the Olam Haba is not during Yemot HaMashiach, and he calls those days Yamim Tovim. And what he's saying is that, when things are good, whether it's the time of Mashiach or maybe when things are good in one's life, that's not when the real work of preparing for Olam Haba is. It has to be done Erev Yom Tov, before the good day, so to speak. And he says, when everything is good, when everything is the way it should be, there's not really room for improvement. There's not really a possibility of tshuva. You can't do the work that needs to be done beforehand. And so he says the reason the statement in Yoma is picks it out with regard to Abraham is because one might think Abraham had it pretty well. Hashem berachat Abraham b'kol. God gave him everything. But no, the rabbis are coming to teach that his searching for Hashem and following God's ways came even before that, even before everything was great, when he was still suffering all the tests and still had difficulty in his life. That's when he was able to achieve all these great things. That's what the verse is trying to, the statement from the rabbis is trying to say. And so I think, obviously these are not the greatest of times. There's a lot of difficulty, but I hope through our learning and through all the mitzvot that we can do now, whether it's speaking of other people, helping others, helping make Kaddish on the Zoom for those who are availing, and all the things that we can do now in these different times, those things should be for us zechuyot for our future, both in the days of Mashiach and in Olam Haba. Thank you so much for participating in tonight's learning. There's a lot more great things to come, but great learning, and it's been a pleasure.
Yes. Kayak, can you make Kayak? Kayak.